when you're designing an API test, don't just look at status code. Don't be like, did it return 200 or did it return 404? You got to do a lot more than that, a lot more in depth than that. That's just automatic. The status code is the most basic thing you can do. So you got to think about these 4 things. One is positive test case. Basically, did it do what it's supposed to do? I made a request in a certain way, expecting it to be successful. Was it successful? But you look at the response body. You actually check if the response has the exact data, not just the status code. Then negative test cases, those are really important. You send bad data and you expect the API to respond the correct way. It should show you the right error message outside the status code. Of course, the status code has to be there. You can be expecting different things, even 500s. 404 is the most basic one, but even 500s or 401s or 403s, you expect that, but the JSON usually should tell you exactly what's wrong if it's a good design. So make sure you think about tests like missing fields, invalid values, bad input, things like that. So 2, right? Positive test case, negative test case. Then authentication. Authentication seems like really basic, but you really want to make sure the API is protected. If it's supposed to be protected, assuming, right? Sometimes you protect it with a network, sometimes you gotta have API keys, but when you design tests, you make sure you include those. What if I make an API call without credentials? What if I have the wrong credentials? What if the credentials are correct, but they're expired? Things like that. And finally, the one that most people don't think about, data. Data in the database, right? That's why API testing requires SQL. You cannot just be API tester without having basic SQL. I don't want to intimidate you, really basic SQL. But when you make an API call, you get a response. That response doesn't always have all the data, right? For example, this is really typical. When you make an API call, the application keeps track of the headers, like the IP address or the country or the region where the API came from, but the response is not going to do that. But the application, since it's doing it, it is important. The designers designed it that way because it's important. So for you, the only way you check it as a tester is you go to the database directly and verify that it is actually documented, it's actually saved. And how you do that? You go directly to the database with SQL, structured query language. So you have to think about those 4 things, right? Positive test case, negative test case, authentication, and the data itself that the API might not give you. All right, my name is Armas Kung Fu. If you're new here, I do QA automation. I teach people QA automation or software engineering in test. Check me out at runsupersqa.com. So you can just search for Super SQA, you'll find it, or listen right there in the bio. And check me out. I have a really great program to help you become an automation engineer.